Well, it's lovely to see so many beautiful faces. Lovely shining faces. We're all shining in our own way. Inward shining. It's like the story I told this morning at breakfast about the Zen monk who was blind, and he was going back to his monastery late at night. And this other monk said, "Have a candle, then everyone can see you, and they don't bump into you." So he was walking along, and someone ran straight into him, and he said, "Why did you run into me? Did you not see the light?" He said, "Brother, your light's gone out." So this is symbolic of the fact that if our lights go out, life might bump into us. And also, this is an appeal to the higher self. I'm going to start off by actually reading the appeal from the Crest Jewel of Wisdom by Sri Shankaracharya. I submit myself to thee, Master, friend of the bowed down world, and river of selfless kindness. Raise me by thy guiding light that pours forth the nectar of truth and mercy, for I am sunk in the ocean of the world. I am burned by the hot flame of relentless life and torn by the winds of misery. Save me from death, for I take refuge in thee, finding no other rest. The great good ones dwell in peace, bringing joy to the world, like the return of spring. Having crossed the ocean of the world, they ever help others to cross over. For this is the very nature of the great souled ones, or the Mahatmas, their swiftness to take away the weariness of others. So the soft-rayed moon of itself soothes the earth, burnt by the fierce sun's heat. Sprinkle me with thy nectar voice that brings the joy of eternal bliss, pure and cooling, falling on me as from a cup, like the joy of inspiration. For I am burnt by the hot scorching flame of the world's fire. Happy are they on whom thy light rests, even for a moment, and who reach harmony with thee. How shall I cross the ocean of the world? Where is the path? What way must I follow? I know not, Master. Save me from the wound of the world's pain. So I'm hoping in this lecture to answer some of those last questions. Hopefully. So the words in this appeal may appear to refer just to an external source, but in reality they are also directed to our truest guide, which is the higher self. This is not to say there are no external masters who give us help and guidance, but the higher self is the ultimate source of guidance and inspiration. The appeal, of course, also refers to the Mahatmas, who devote their lives to helping others and to pouring beneficent energy into the hearts and minds of those who are receptive, and helping those who need their help in so many different ways. But the appeal just read is from a soul who is really longing to understand and has experienced the pain that an awareness of the transitory nature of life gives, and who wants to turn their thoughts to more permanent realities. In the Key to Theosophy, H.P. Blavatsky says that the higher self is Atma, the inseparable ray of the universal and one self. It is the God above more than within us. Happy the man or woman who succeeds in saturating his inner ego with it. So it's something we all share in this room. It is impersonal and belongs to no one person in particular. W.Q. Judge, one of the early founders of the Theosophical Society, writes, "Remember that the greatest and truest friend is the higher self. He or she who has the higher self as his friend possesses all things and lacks nothing. And the higher self is your friend, if you will but receive that friendship. Sounds so simple, doesn't it? Just receive that friendship. But it's not as easy as it seems because of our complicated minds. What we need to understand, as the Bhagavad Gita tells us, true peace will only come by surrendering ourselves to this higher self. When it is said to be our friend, it does not mean that it takes personal interest in our lives. It won't help us to win the lottery or find a partner or find a parking space or whatever like that. Something else may do, but not the higher self. When it is said to be our friend, it means that it shines its light on us impersonally, as does the sun. And the light of the Spirit then is always there as a guiding star when we need it, when we have the ability to attune to it. Something impermanent amidst the impermanent, a light at the end of the long tunnel of life and death. It's a light at the end of the tunnel, not an oncoming train, as some people say. It's something that everyone in this room shares. It shines individually in us as Buddhi Manas, the illumined mind, Manas Tajasta. But it is our common ground, the area of our lives in which we come together, and all mind-made differences fade into insignificance. There's a very beautiful story in Indian mythology concerning the pole star, or Dhruv, as it's known as in India. It is a tale of how the pole star came to be fixed where it is, but also a symbolic tale of the soul's journey. Dhruv was a child and a prince, the eldest son of the king and his chief queen. However, a younger queen had stolen the heart of the king, often happens, and managed to convince him to banish the prince and his mother to the forest. There they live until the child is 7, very symbolic, and then he becomes curious about his father and wishes to visit him. Permission is given, and so on the appointed day he sets out on his fateful trip. His father is glad to see him, and the boy feels totally contented sitting on his father's knee. But as in each one of our lives, disillusionment comes. Dhruva's stepmother arrives and is jealous of the love being bestowed upon the child. She rants and raves, and his father gives in, puts him down. Dhruva is devastated. The love that he felt was all protecting has failed him. He returns to the forest and asks his mother if there is any love in the world that will never let him down. "Oh yes, my child," she replies. "There is the lotus-eyed. In him is all strength." Dhruv asked where he lived. His mother then felt the sorrowful pangs, feeling that his words were the hint of parting. She told him that the lotus-eyed one dwelt deep in the forest, where the bear and the tiger lived. This refers in one sense to constellations, or perhaps to certain dangers and trials on the path, and also our lower passions and emotions. So that night he decided to go and find the lotus-eyed one. He looked lovingly on his sleeping mother before he departed and said to himself, "Lotus-eyed one, I give my mother to thee." And then as he paused at the threshold of his house, he said, "O lotus-eyed one, I give myself to thee." And this is symbolic of entering the homeless state, which is a state of mind. In reality, spiritual teachings do not encourage anyone to desert their family. H.P. Blavatsky once wrote that we must do our duty by the people we are allied to through various ties, marriage and elderly parents, children, etc. If we sacrifice anyone but ourselves to the truth, we will fail in the end. So Dhruv entered the forest, and in his childlike innocence was unaware of the dangers. This is becoming like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. He met the 7 sages and asked them the direction, and finally came to the centre of the forest and stood there waiting. Then the tiger came, and Dhruv rushed eagerly to him. "Art thou he?" he asked the tiger. But the tiger turned away and walked away in shame. Then the bear came, and he asked the same question of it, but it too walked away in shame. Then, as Dhruv watched and waited, the great sage Narada appeared and gave him a mantra and told him to sit at the heart of the forest and fix his mind on this mantra and recite it constantly. Then he would find the lotus-eyed one. So, at the heart of the forest, where we see the pole star, Dhruv still sits reciting his mantra, and he has long ago found that unshakable love. That is the lotus-eyed one. He has found it in his very own heart. And he fixed his mind so deeply into meditation that even when the white ants came and built the mighty anthill of the midnight sky around him, Dhruv was not aware of it and never moved. He stayed motionless, all absorbed, and still sits there even to this day, meditating on the lotus-eyed one, forever and ever and ever. Amen. Of course, all this is very symbolic, but we are all Dhruvs in our way. We are children of the universe, and we are capable of finding that unshakable love that will uphold us through the most painful and difficult times in our lives. The appeal to the higher self is just a beginning in one way, and yet it is an appeal that we can make at any stage of our journey and constantly renew. Not particularly in the words I use, but in our own words that we can find within our own heart that appeal to us personally, in whatever tradition we're in, whatever way we want to. There is an alchemical process started by a sincere appeal to the higher self. It is affirming within oneself the sincerity of one's efforts to find the real self and to live in its light. It is also giving us the right frame of mind to pursue our studies and our meditations. It is also admitting that we are lost in this material world, and it helps us to cultivate the inexpressible yearning of the inner man or woman to go out towards the infinite. And we all have this inexpressible yearning to go out towards the infinite. So we have suffered the indoctrination of material education and the media that does not feed the spirit for far too long. We may have struggled to escape, but found the pressures too hard. And now we are ready to call on something infinitely more powerful than any of these influences, something that remains untouched by the world, that we create in our ignorance, and something that is an expression that was used a lot in the 90s, but not much now, that is user-friendly. Yeah, user-friendly. They don't seem to say that very much now. And can be accessed by any of us at any time, if we just know how to. It is certainly our greatest friend, and one that always looks at us with compassion and love. This is no sentimental statement, though. What is meant is that its nature is harmony. And if we attune ourselves to its vibrations, we feel that harmony flooding through our whole being. For what is real, true love but harmony? So we're not talking about some personal entity that thinks in the way that we do. But the centre of the universe is harmony. The nature of the universe is harmony. And that harmony is reflected in us as love. In the East, this contemplation of the spirit or Atma is a supreme yoga. It is known as Adhyatma yoga, or the yoga of the supreme self. And there is something immediately ennobling about contemplating the supreme self. Nowadays we find it so difficult to meditate on this subject because it may seem weird or alien to us. Well, this again is due to conditioning. For when even a little of the light of the spirit illumines our minds, we begin to see that the life we are now leading is the strange one. But we are so immersed in it that it seems normal. It seems to satisfy all our needs on this plane. Well, this is because we feed the animal part of our nature, the desire to seek food, procreate, build nests, etc., or buy houses. It's our equivalent of building nests, isn't it? All of these are essential in this world to most of us. We must not become totally swallowed up by them. If we are all one, and that is the teaching of all the world's great religions, then whatever we do or think affects everyone and everything else. And we are indeed our brother and sister's keepers. The great mind is within us. The great mind used by the world's teachers, Krishna, Gautama Buddha, Jesus, Plato, Pythagoras, and H.P. Blavatsky, and many others in other teachings, they all live within us. For as Plato says, and this is one of my key mantric sayings I use in most of my talks, all true learning is merely recollection. All true learning is merely recollection. We're just remembering who we are. Another little thing that I thought of, a little mantra is, we are already there, but not aware. And I was saying that this morning, I think one of the meetings this morning, that the great Zen master Bankei said that it's not, we should not be trying to become Buddhas, we should be trying to remain as Buddhas. Because we are already there, sitting on this seat now, we're already there. But we have to get away all the obstructions that stop us from seeing who we are now at this moment. And that's important. So let's become familiar with our higher self. I have heard from a few sources that it is good to give it a secret name. And maybe that may work for some, or maybe for others it is personalising it too much. But it's all up to the individual and what feels right for them. So if you want to call your higher self Fred or something like that, maybe. Theosophy does not dogmatise. I mean, personally, I wouldn't do it because I would think it was anthropomorphising it a bit too much. But, what suits you? What suits you, The important thing is to come to the realisation that knowledge of the higher self is the one thing in this life that is really worth knowing. The one thing that's really worth knowing. And nothing in this world even slightly matters compared to finding this self within. Jesus said, don't store your treasure on earth where moth and rust corrupt and where thieves may break in, but store your treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not corrupt and where thieves cannot break in. So you store your treasures inwardly. Inwardly. And that's important. So we will come then to realise that everything in our personal lives is transitory and cannot give permanent happiness. So although we can still live in the world and join in with many of its pleasures, and we're in the happy position of not relying on them, not relying on them to find happiness, to find permanent happiness. So that when they do fail us, as often they do, we can fall back on something that is permanent and will never let us down, never desert us. Our relationships with others are also improved because we see that we are one with everyone else, and so we have a reason to look on others as our brothers and sisters in the truest sense. Something I've not written down, but I used in a previous talk I gave a few weeks back, was that when I was in Manchester once, I saw all these people walking down Market Street, thousands of people, and I thought of my favourite friend spiritually, the Bodhisattva Never Despise, who when he was he lived in a time when Buddhism was in a bad state, and the monks and nuns were living dissolute lives, and they would often attack him physically, throw stones and kick him, beat him to the ground. But he'd always get up, look them in the face and say, I will never despise you because you will all be Buddhas someday. And so I saw these people walking in the street and I thought, there's so many people, different lives, different occupations, different stages of being, but they will all be Buddhas someday. They will all be Buddhas someday. Maybe millions of years, maybe only 10 years, I don't know, but they will all be Buddhas someday. So this helps us to feel compassionately towards others and always try to awaken them to an awareness of their real selves. If they are receptive to that. If not, we should help in whatever ways we can, in whatever ways they need. We should never condemn because we may have been where they are in a past life or maybe in future lives. All are on different levels, but all the same journey. They are our fellow pilgrims. So where do we start this journey? Well, we start it right here in the present moment, because that's all we ever have. There's only the present moment. The past is a series of images that we hold on to, and the future just a series of expectations, or maybe fears. So it is valuable to make a vow to dedicate ourselves to the highest that we can conceive of within us, which will be different for everyone in this room. And let us consciously strive to refuse to be misled by the allurements of this material world. The way is to be able to think for ourselves and act spontaneously under the guidance of the Supreme Self, and to live guided by the light of true freedom, to recover innocence and love, which are at the heart of our being, and our expressions in this world of our true selves. So as I said, we start from here and now, in this beautiful moment, which is forever. There'll never be another moment but this. Never be another time. We will always live, love, laugh and weep, share thoughts and dream dreams in this moment now. So let's take time by the forelock, as a Theosophical master once said, and begin to work on ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, we need to make the higher self our friend. Not to think of it as something high and mighty and distant from us. The Orthodox Christian and Muslim idea of God has made us see things this way, even if we are consciously unaware of it at times. It's made us feel ourselves in a way that we are weak, miserable sinners. Of course, we're not. We're neither weak, we're neither miserable. Well, sometimes we may be. And sinners. But we're not. We're spiritual beings. The higher self is us, we are it. There's a mantra in the Indian tradition which says, Aham Brahmasmi, which means I am Brahman. Brahman is the real self. It's not some weird Eastern mantras, but an affirmation of who or what we really are. As I often quote in my talks, because it has so much meaning, is Plato's statement that I mentioned earlier, in passing, that all true learning is merely recollection. It is called anamnesis. Anamnesis, which is soul memory. It's a bit like amnesia, but the opposite. Anamnesis, soul memory. It's the indoctrination of society slowly wearing away, so that we do not see in a glass darkly anymore, but we begin to awaken from our dream. We are in some ways like the sleeping beauty that needs the kiss of pure spirit to awaken us. We need the holy kiss, the kiss of the universe. But to come back to earth again, unfortunately, we do need to adjust our lives so that we attune ourselves to the higher self. If some religion tells us that we must give up this or that, we tend to reject it if we're unable to think a little deeper. If we're able to think a little deeper. It sounds so heavy. Give up alcohol, give up drink and drugs to some people, and sexual relations. Give up lying or taking what is not given to us. Give up taking life, although that may not be so hard to come to terms with. But in fact, give up our personalities in the end. This all sounds too much, and indeed in reality giving up all these things does not automatically make us holy or special. There are a lot of people who eat meat and live what we might think of, drink alcohol, and are really beautiful, good people. And lots of people who are vegetarians or vegans who aren't particularly nice. It doesn't automatically make people holy. H.P. Blavatsky said that, becoming a vegetarian doesn't make one holy, because even cows and elephants are vegetarians. Well, these things can only be given up effectively when we realise the necessity for giving them up, because we feel within us a love and devotion to the real self. And there comes a time when those things just mentioned become a barrier to seeing that self in ourselves and others. They become barriers to an enlightened relationship with others. They befog our minds and become like the poisoned robe that clung to the body of Hercules, so that it tore at his flesh as he tried to get free of it. But if we can become like Hercules, then we will do well, because these struggles killed out the lower part of his nature, and like the phoenix rising from the flames, his struggles purified him. It is then the process of getting a preference for something higher, better, a realisation that the things of the world, as I've said, that we once thought were so important, are in fact useless in our quest. This is the real beginning. From here, we can begin to do as Dhruv did in the story I told earlier, and find that part of us that is eternal. It is not a cold principle that we are seeking, but the very essence of what we call love. And this is the teaching of most works from the East and some from the West. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us to fix our whole attention on the higher self, symbolised by Krishna, who says that he is the Lord, the witness, the resting place, the asylum, and the friend. The Lord, the witness, the resting place, the asylum, and the friend. Also, many of the Christian and Sufi mystics talk about merging themselves into God. The Buddhists talk of the impermanence of the personal self, and through the process of meditation, the emergence of the true man or woman, and the eventual oneness of the soul with the universal soul. So all of the great religions deal with this problem, and all of them in their inner essence encourage us to find that true self. Robert Crosby, who was a theosophist from the early days and founded the United Lodge of Theosophists, writes, "The patient dwelling of the mind on a single thought results in the gaining of wisdom. Aspiration towards the higher self should form part of the daily meditation, the rising towards the higher planes of our being, which cannot be found unless they are sought. Which cannot be found unless they are sought. Seek and ye shall find." So we have to have it clear in our minds that we are aspiring towards the higher self, and that we must resolve to make it a living power in our lives. And if we are to follow the true theosophical spirit, we should try also to communicate some of its power and beauty to others, particularly those who are suffering. H.P. Blavatsky writes in The Key to Theosophy, "In every conceivable case, he himself must be a centre of spiritual action, and from him and his daily life must radiate those higher spiritual forces which alone can regenerate his fellow men and women. We must become centres of, like I've said, I mentioned earlier, PowerPoints, if you like. Not PowerPoint presentations. Well, maybe, yeah. We can present our PowerPoint. We must never forget in this context that the heart of Theosophy is altruism. The masters themselves stated that they wanted a brotherhood of humanity, a real universal fraternity started. This was the aim of founding the society, and they also stated that it was never meant as a training ground for adepts. The welfare of humanity was of paramount importance to them, and in cultivating an awareness of our higher self, we must always keep this in mind. I'll go more into detail on that in the study course on doing. The higher self is our true guru. We may need worldly gurus at certain stages to steer us on our way and help to attune our beings, but we have to walk the path alone. No one can walk it for us. Imagine going out onto the moors. We have to do the walking for ourselves, but signposts are very important, otherwise we might head off in the wrong direction and get lost. The signpost is up there. It's just a signpost. It's essential, but we have to do the walking. So the higher self is our true guru. Which, again, like I said, we might need the worldly gurus, but it's a do-it-yourself thing. So let's recap a little. If I have learned anything in my life, it is the fact that the higher self is not something cold or distant that lives only in the pages of books. Although because we have lost contact with it, it feels that way most of the time. People do terrible things in the world, like terrorism and all that, saying it's in the name of God. But HPB said it's the awakening, the first signs of spiritual awakening is the awakening of the conscience. If you kill out your conscience, you kill out your attachment to your divine self. So no one who can do these terrible things can be in touch with God or the divine. It is essential at these times to keep it alive, if only as an intellectual concept, perhaps, until the day when its beauty and light returns and our hearts are animated by compassion again. This is because it is who we really are behind the mask of personality. Persona, the word persona means a mask. The personality comes from a mask, the word mask. And so the people who got the word together must have realised that it was masking something. And we will never feel totally content in ourselves until we awaken to that fact, the realisation that the personality is just a mask. There will always be that nagging, divine discontent, a divine discontent with who we are. And, once we awaken, it's a poison chalice sometimes that when you awaken to the spiritual self, you become restless. You have this divine discontent with life as it is. You need things to change. Separateness is called in the voice of the silence a great dire heresy, because it makes us believe that we have to assert ourselves as an individual, a family, a town, country, and entire planet from others. This is also true as regards religions and political and philosophical things. So the teaching that echoes down through the ages from the lips of the most spiritual teachers and leaders is love one another. You know, Jesus said, all I ask of you is that you love others as I have loved you. This is only truly practicable if we awaken to this oneness. That was the purpose of all age people have asked in the Master's teachings. The secret doctrine was not given out so that we could just gain information about the principles of man, the planet, and the solar system for our own satisfaction. They were given out so that we had a solid basis to realise this oneness. So that it wouldn't be based upon vague mysticism or emotionalism. But the aim is to apply what we learn for the good of all. If one takes time to study the works of H.P. Blavatsky, the secret doctrine, the key to theosophy, the voice of the silence, and the many articles in particular, this shines through very clearly, as he is representative of the Brotherhood of Bodhisattvas that initiated the society. So she has that motive in everything that she writes and does for this universal brotherhood of humanity, a real universal fraternity. It is through this that we can awaken the intuition if we study in the right way, meditating on the words and trying to bring them to life. That is not to say there are not other ways to reach this understanding, but there is food for many different temperaments. I have found that studying theosophy helps to throw a light on many other systems and gives one discrimination, being able to sort out the wheat from the chaff and know what increases our ability to attune ourselves to the higher self and what alienates us more. Let's pause and look a little deeper. Books and teachings are words on paper or words cast in the air. They are sounds and images trying to convey something beyond sounds and images. They are meant to inspire or lead us to wake up from our slumbers, but they can only ever be pointers. Another simile many of you will have heard in my talks is that of the raft. The Buddha taught that teachings are like a raft needed to cross a river. Without the raft, we would not get across. But once across, it is no longer needed. It becomes a burden. You will go across the countryside carrying your raft on your back. But we need it then, and we may need it again, not for the time being. So I was trying to say that the intellectual side of it is essential, but we have to know when to leave it behind. It is true that all the poetry and music in our lives, all the compassion and love, all the hope and optimism, joy and comfort in dark times comes from the higher self. This is how it speaks to us. It is beautiful to contemplate that there is this unfailing wellspring of love and light in our lives that can never die once we awaken to it. The language of the soul comes to us through intimations of our immortality and in the bliss we feel at times just being alive in spite of the difficulties we encounter on our pilgrimage back to our true self. In fact, the signs that we are truly on our road back to reality are an increased awareness of the beauty in all things, particularly our fellow men and women. It is a realisation slowly dawning of their potential. A realisation slowly dawning of their potential. Another favourite well-used quote of mine is from Pythagoras. Take heart, for the race of man is divine. Take heart, for the race of man is divine. So we have to take heart. So no matter how far someone appears to have fallen, there's always a chance to redeem themselves. It is our minds that have created pessimism. There's really no such thing on higher levels of being. How can there be when the dawning of true understanding floods our whole being with an eternal sunlight that will illumine our steps all the way, no matter how faltering they may be at the outset? We must always have faith, not the blind faith of most religions, but true faith based upon a growing knowledge and reliance on the higher self through our studies or meditations, as said. And this is developed gradually at a pace dependent on the application and devotion of the aspirant by making this faith in the higher self this line of life meditation, no matter what we are doing in the physical world. As you go a long way for the water. I'll be back in a minute. Sri Shankaracharya says, feeling whilst going about that he is a wave on the ocean of self, while sitting that he is a bead strung on the thread of the universal consciousness, whilst perceiving objects of sense that he is realising himself by perceiving the self, and while sleeping that he is drowned in the ocean of bliss. He who inwardly constant spends his whole life thus is amongst all men the real seeker of liberation. No matter what we're doing, we have to have this awareness of the self at the back of the divinity at the back of our mind, back of our being. But we mustn't go to extremes. It's a bit like tuning a guitar. If the strings are too tight, it is discordant. If they are too slack, it is also discordant. We have to find the right balance. We also need to give up the masks we wear. And these include the exoteric religions we cling to. They all need to dissolve into the ever-present reality of our true divinity, the higher self. But the personal self always wishes to push itself forward, to dominate, to have positions of power, to boost its false sense of permanence. When in reality, in a personal sense, we are just dust in the wind. We're just dust in the wind. There's a song called Dust in the Wind. I think we made it. I remember Sarah Brightman sung one version of it.
Kansas.
Kansas. Oh, yeah. Kansas, yeah. They did the original, yeah. It's a good song, that actually. It's got a lot of good meaning to it, of meaning in it. Throughout history, so many terrible things have been perpetrated as a result of the idea that we are separate, and somehow need to dominate those less forceful, and the need for the personality to give some credence to its brief existence. People constantly strive to give credence to this the few decades that we're here. I think it's something like 30,000 days or something that we're here. It's not very long when you think of it. but in the personality, of course, we're inwardly eternal beings. If our studies make us cold or indifferent to the plight of others, then we need to start attuning ourselves to the enlightened intelligence of our higher self. The way the world is at the moment, in this Age of Cali, we all know about the Age of Cali, don't we, that we're in the Dark Age. It's said to have started 5,000 years ago with the death of Krishna. It lasts for 432,000 years, and we've gone through 5,000. Now, when I say that, people tend to say, oh, God. But it's actually the shortest of the ages. I think the Golden Age is about 4 times in length, so once we reach that. But there's also a great opportunity in the Age of Cali to develop, because there's so many things that help us to develop our inner nature. Almost like when you take weights and you push against the weights, it strengthens your muscles. When you push against the world, things in the world that can develop your spiritual nature, not to develop your spiritual nature. So I'll repeat, take heart, for the race of man is divine. In Theosophy, we hear of a guardian wall that protects humanity from far greater evils, though given the horrors that sometimes descend upon us, we may wonder what could be worse. So I believe that evil will never be allowed to triumph in the long run, but it may appear to do so in the short term. I think good will eventually triumph, always. But that's the way everything's going, towards the good, the true and the beautiful. All that goes on in this world does not touch the spiritual dimension to our being. Nothing can. Not even the destruction of the entire planet. When we manage to get in touch with our higher self, we have reached a place of safety, the calm at the centre of the storm. You know, in the centre of the storm, there's a calmness. Everything whirls around and round. In the centre, where we are, like Druth, in the centre of the universe, everything that goes on around us, we are calm, we are tranquil, we are at peace. So to sum up quickly, the Bhagavad Gita says that all true knowledge reduces ignorance to ashes. And the only knowledge that means anything is that which awakens us to this awareness of our true nature. Because it is the only kind of knowledge that remains with us permanently through all our lives. You know, that is what all the world's great religions tell us to cultivate. Cultivate this kind of knowledge as opposed to the merely intellectual. Because eventually the intellectual will fail us. You know, it will fail us. It means nothing. It's just words. And what we're trying to do is become real. You know, not become slaves to words. Like Shankaracharya also said, the mind of a man is lost in a labyrinth of words, like a man lost in a thick forest. You know, we can become lost in a labyrinth of words like a man in a thick forest. We have to go within, and then we can read with an enlightened mind and enlightened understanding of what we're reading. So the important thing then is to hold on to this permanent, despite all the changes that go on in the world within us and around us. We need to find that true man or woman and restore our unshakable faith in the power of the Spirit. We also have to have an enlightened understanding that all is working towards the good. Though in this age of Cali, that may seem unbelievable at times, if we're looking from a physical level. But if we open our inner eye and see with a spiritual vision, we will discern through the fog the glimmerings of the light of the sun, and in time the mists will clear and the glorious light of the sun will shine on us all. So take heart and work on with your studies and meditations. They will bear fruit in time, and the world sorely needs those who can keep the torch of truth burning through the most difficult of times. Theosophy is just as relevant now as in the days when the modern Theosophical movement was started. And if we stay true to those teachings and discover how to intelligently put them into practice, we can do much good in this suffering world. So in our lives, let us constantly renew this appeal and keep it alive as we go about our daily business until it does become our line of life meditation and our constant practice. Thank you.
Thank you.